Hey there, happy Saturday. Sorry, my phone just fell over as soon as I pressed start, of course. Happy Saturday, everybody. I hope your weekends are off to a beautiful start. Wherever you are, I hope you have as beautiful weather as we are having right now in St. Louis. It is finally warming up, and I am super happy about it. So today we are going to be talking about sensory sensitivities. This is something that I think pretty much I would say not all, maybe 95% of the kids that we work with are dealing with some sensory sensitivities in some capacity, even if it's just they don't like the way tags feel on their shirt or they get really weird about the way the texture of their food is. So I think sensory sensitivities can apply to pretty much anybody that might be watching this video or is engaged in our program. So I wanted to talk about that one today. But as always, before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about a couple of texts that I got this week from some clients that have been with us. So the first one I want to share is really exciting for me because this family has been with us, I want to say, probably for about 2 months now. And in the very beginning, they didn't see as much change as quickly as most of our families were seeing at the time. This family actually has a few other friends that started the program right around the same time as them. And all these other people were getting like crazy night and day difference changes, but they weren't seeing a ton yet. And the reason is their son is really, really high functioning. He's not really struggling with the massive emotional dysregulation or the speech problems or any of those really intense symptoms like a lot of the kids that started at the same time as him were experiencing. So the change looked a little bit different for him. Some of the kids that we bring into our program are, we always talk about right side of the brain and left side of the brain, and I use my hands to kind of demonstrate that. So if you imagine this as their left hemisphere and this is their right hemisphere, often a lot of the kids that we deal with are struggling like this. The right side of their brain is way underconnected, underdeveloped. It's not doing what it's supposed to do. But then we have kids like this guy whose left hemisphere is actually more functioning at too high of a level. So let's say if he's 12 years old, sometimes we have kids where their left hemisphere is functioning like a 12-year-old, but their right hemisphere is functioning maybe like a 10-year-old or a 9-year-old. But with kids like him that are really high functioning, really intelligent, but just struggling a lot with anxiety and sometimes tics and that kind of thing, but you're not having the big meltdowns or emotional dysregulation or issues with social skills or anything like that, he actually has an overactive left hemisphere. So if he's 12, his left hemisphere might be functioning at a 13-year-old level or a 14-year-old level. And we're still going to see some symptoms here, but we're doing this instead of doing this, if that makes sense. So the change just looked a little bit different for him. And for the past, I would say in the first month or so, we didn't see a lot of huge changes. One thing that we did see change with him though was that he stopped being afraid to ride his bike. He can ride his bike. He has the coordination to do it. He just never wanted to ride his bike because he was afraid of it because he had some vestibular issues. So that's the way our body reacts to and feels and perceives gravity and movement and motion. So we started working on his vestibular system and that fear started to go away. Anyway, all of that is to say, Mom texted me last night and she said, not only is he riding his bike and he's trying new foods for the first time ever, but he just returned to jiu-jitsu and is enjoying it again. He stopped 4 months ago due to anxiety, and we're so excited to see these positive changes. His focus and attention are definitely improved as well. We are so thankful. So obviously I was like, oh my gosh, what? Tell me about his focus also, because that is such a big deal and so important. But she said, okay, so we're not doing normal school right now, but I'll read books out loud to my kids. And often he'll say, I didn't catch all of that, or I don't really understand. And he kind of admits to zoning out often because he's just got some focus issues. But she said she's really not seeing him do that too much anymore. And another thing is when he would go to youth group after school or, in the evening or whatever, and he'd come back, she'd ask him what he learned, and he normally would say things like, I don't really remember, I had a hard time paying attention, because that's often a very crazy environment. But she said last night he came home and actually told me what he learned, and he doesn't make the comment that he zoned out anymore. He has such an easier time staying on track and focusing and listening, which is so cool. We're so excited for them. And then I got another text. I'm going to make this fast and we're going to get into it. But I've been talking about our 2-week challenge that we just started. So we're doing a 2-week Facebook group challenge where essentially you get access to all of the stuff that we teach in the first 2 weeks of our program. So it's mostly just primitive reflex suppression exercises. So it's about $500 worth of information that we're giving everybody in this challenge for only $77. We're about to do it again because this text really validated to me that this is the right thing to be doing. I would say they actually started on the challenge a day late. So I think they started on Wednesday. And she said, I was thinking about the changes that you told me to look for, and our son seemed more settled yesterday, if that makes sense, more grounded, more centered. He seemed overall calmer. And one notable moment was when he caught a ladybug and called for his friends by name to come and see. He shared it with each of them and then gently released it. Usually when he captures a bug, he ends up accidentally squishing them. It was an unusual moment of connection with friends. And then again today, he found a toad and played with it for about 45 minutes with his sister and friend. It was just an unusual connection where everyone played happily together without him feeling left out or getting into an argument over whose turn it is to hold it. Usually these interactions end with someone complaining about him killing it or him not sharing it, but not today, which is amazing. She said another big thing that I noticed was that Lucas was able to self-regulate his emotions better. A few things happened where I thought he was going to melt down, but was able to calm himself without assistance from me. The biggest thing that happened today was how he handled getting hurt. He accidentally closed his own finger in the door and it got pinched, which is so terrible. But normally when he gets hurt, no matter how big or small, he always screams at the top of his lungs and is inconsolable for a few minutes. Today he cried, but the volume was what you would expect for his age and injury. He also allowed ice when he normally wouldn't, and he let his dad sit with him so I could get his baby sister, even though he wanted me, and that was pretty big. So you guys, this is Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. She sent this last night. This is 3 days of primitive reflex suppression exercises. That is huge, and just I think a huge testament to how important primitive reflex suppression is. So if you guys are thinking about getting into one of our programs, but you're not 100% sure yet, you're not ready to pull the trigger, I think this $77 challenge is a great way for you to see how your child is going to respond to even just the first couple of weeks of our exercises. So that was really exciting for me, and I had to share it like always. Now let's get into sensory sensitivities. Why are our kiddos struggling with those things? Whether it's, the way jeans feel, tags, shoes, socks. We have kids who have to line up the line on their socks absolutely perfectly, or they melt down. They refuse to wear jeans, or what a lot of them refer to as hard pants. And also auditory sensitivity. Why do they cover their ears? Why are they sensitive to loud noises or sudden noises? All right. So the first one that I want to talk about is auditory sensitivity. Why are kids sensitive to loud noises or sudden noises? So there's actually a difference, I think, between kids that have issues with loud noises and kids that have issues with sudden noises. So the first one I want to talk about is the sudden noises, and we're going to talk about primitive reflexes. As always, I have to start there. So one thing that we've talked about in a few of these videos in the past is the startle reflex, but it's also called the Moreau reflex, which is kind of exactly what it sounds like. This causes kids to be easily startled. So what happens is if you lay a baby down on their back and you clap really loud or you slam a door, that baby is going to fling their whole body open like this, and then they're going to curl into the fetal position and probably start to cry. So this startle reflex, like all other primitive reflexes, is supposed to be completely suppressed or integrated by 1 year. And when that process doesn't happen the right way, which it doesn't for a lot of kids, there is actually a study done in, I can never remember the years, either 2016 or 2017, they did primitive reflex screening for preschoolers that year, and they found that 65% of preschoolers that year had retained primitive reflexes, which is a really scary number and kind of a big problem. But primitive reflexes don't always get integrated or suppressed correctly. So when we have a 3-year-old or a 5-year-old or a 60-year-old or a 25-year-old with retained primitive reflexes, we're going to see some symptoms of that. So with a startle reflex, we're going to see a really similar response to the one that we see in babies. When there's a sudden loud noise, like a toilet flush in a public bathroom, or somebody starts the blender unexpectedly, or something really heavy falls to the ground and makes a big noise, we have a startle response. And I've seen this literally in adults, where the test for this is really easy, and you can try this out with your kids or your family members. But you just have your person stand in front of you like this with their arms kind of up and their elbows together. And you stand behind them, or you can stand in front of them if you don't have a partner. You just stand in front of them and have them close their eyes, and then you clap really loud. And you let them know what's coming. Don't tell them when you're about to clap. Just say, I'm going to clap really loud. And when I clap, I want you to cross your arms over your chest like this. And I've seen full-grown adults, as soon as I clap, their arms splay out like this, and they freak out, and then they forget that they were even supposed to cross their arms over their chest because their startle reflex is so intense. Now, it doesn't always look like that. Sometimes you'll just see a little bit of kind of a reaction in their face where their eyes will go like this or something like that. All of that is a startle response. None of us should be doing that when we know that the clap is coming. So when we have a retained startle reflex, we have people that are just really sensitive to sudden loud noises. And when that startle reflex gets triggered, what happens is we get a kind of flush of stress hormones in our body. We get adrenaline and cortisol hit our body instantly. And those are chemicals that take a really, really long time to kind of flush out of our bodies. So often this will lead to emotional dysregulation, which we talked about last time, because we have these kids who were startled earlier on in the day and they're walking around with all this cortisol and all this stress stuff kind of hanging out in their body and they can't get rid of it. And then something small happens, but it sets them off so instantly because they were already so amped up on those chemicals, if that makes sense. So this will cause, the retained startle reflex will cause sensitivity to loud and sudden noises. If that's what you're seeing with your child or with yourself, with the loud sudden noises, it's very likely because of a startle reflex. I actually have a retained startle reflex myself that I'm working on, and I remember there was one day that I saw it so blatantly in myself. I was sitting in my apartment and I was just having a great time, singing songs, cooking dinner, chopping carrots or something, and somebody knocked on my door, and my dog, I think, also has a startle reflex. She just freaked out. So like there was the knock and then there was her barking super loud, super instantly, and my whole nervous system was just like, oh my God. And I jumped up off of my floor and my arms went out like this and I threw my knife across the room. So yeah, my startle reflex is pretty intense, but I find myself really, really jumpy. I've always been jumpy. I've always known that about myself. And now I know that it's because of my startle reflex and I'm working on it. So sensitive to sudden loud noises is often because of that retained startle reflex. So if this sounds like you or your child, please send me a message. We've done past videos on the startle reflex. I've already kind of talked about how to test it, but I've got more in-depth training on how to test it. And I have videos on how to get that reflex suppressed. So if you have any questions about that, if that sounds like your kid, please, please, please send me a message. You can put a comment down here and I can send you a message with any information that you want so we can start helping your kiddo. Okay, so that is the first one. The startle reflex is going to be what leads to sensitivity to sudden and loud noises. And then we also have kids and adults who just get really kind of overwhelmed with too much going on. If it's not so much about the sudden, if it's just about constant noise or loud noise and you just see your child getting really overwhelmed and overstimulated, this might be because of an auditory processing problem. Hi, Mike. Thank you for joining. This might be because of an auditory processing problem. So what happens is, you know, our right hemisphere and our left hemisphere have to process all the information that comes in through our right ear and our left ear, and we have to determine what sounds are important and what sounds aren't important. For example, I'm sitting here talking to you guys, and there are birds chirping over here, and there's some really loud air conditioner running over there that I hope you guys can't hear, but I'm able to kind of tune all of that out for the most part and just focus on this video that I'm doing, the sound of my own voice. So I'm able to kind of tune out all of these noises that aren't important to me. But when we have low auditory processing, we have no ability to do that. So the bird and the air conditioner and the sound of the person trying to talk to you and trying to get your attention, all of those sounds are competing for space, and our brains aren't able to filter out what sounds do we need to focus on and what sounds are unimportant and just block those out. So if you're finding that your child struggles more to kind of deal with just chaotic environments that are just loud everywhere, there's a bunch of people talking, there's a lot of loud noises going on, rather than that sudden and instant loud noise, it might be because of an auditory processing issue instead. So again, that's something that we should talk about. If this sounds like your child, please send me a message and I will send you as many exercises as I can to start helping them. So that is kind of my thing on auditory sensitivity. And then the last thing I want to talk about is tactile sensitivity. So I've talked about this one in the past too. Most tactile sensitivity really comes down to a retained spinal galant reflex. So just like I talked about with the Moreau reflex, it's supposed to be gone by 1 year, but that doesn't happen for everybody, as we know. So a spinal galant reflex is another primitive reflex, and it's a set of nerves that runs all the way up and down your spine. And when you stimulate those nerves on a baby, it causes them to wiggle a little bit. So the only reason we have this primitive reflex is because during birth, those nerves are actually supposed to kind of push against the birth canal, and babies kind of wiggle themselves out of the womb a little bit. That is the only reason we have it. We don't use it for anything else ever, but it's supposed to help us kind of get out of the womb. And so what happens is when we have a retained spinal galant reflex past that 1 year, now we have this set of nerves that runs up and down our spine that's really, really sensitive still. So think about the way a tag is going to feel on this set of nerves that's overly sensitive, or the way jeans are going to feel on this set of nerves that's overly sensitive. So many of our kids that have tactile sensitivity issues have issues with pants. Pants are like the big thing with them because, if you think about it, if you have something with an elastic waistband, it doesn't have room to shift around on your hips, and all these nerves kind of come together right at the base of your spine. So you have all of these, this fabric, these jeans, these khakis, whatever, that are able to shift around because they don't have that elastic waistband keeping everything right to their hips. So as they move around and as they shift around, they're just getting all of this really uncomfortable stimulation to this set of nerves that kind of comes together at the bottom of their spine, and it's uncomfortable. And they can't really articulate why it's uncomfortable because it's been uncomfortable from day one. They've always just hated the way jeans feel and hated the way hard pants feel, but they have a hard time articulating it, so they just melt down when you put jeans on them. But it really is super, super uncomfortable for them in a way that's just kind of hard for them to describe. So if you think your child has a spinal galant reflex, there's a really simple exercise you can do for it. We call them snow angels. And it's exactly what it sounds like. You're going to have them lay on the ground, and they can do this, if you can get as much tactile stimulation to their body as you possibly can during this exercise. So do it on carpet, have them take all their clothes off while they do this, so their whole back of their body can be rubbing against the carpet as they do this. And they're literally just going to make snow angels on the ground, and you're just giving a ton of stimulation to all these nerves that run across the back of their body. And when we have a really intensely retained spinal galant reflex, we often also see bedwetting. That's when we have the more severe spinal galant reflex. We don't see that when it's pretty mild, but as it gets more severe, we see more and more bedwetting. So that's a great way to know if your child has a spinal galant reflex. But if you want to test it, if you want to learn more about the exercise, you're just going to have them lay on the ground and do 7 snow angel repetitions, and do that as many times a day as you can. But if you want to talk more about that, please send me a message, put a comment down there, and I'll send you a message. I would love to talk to you more about this. As you can tell, this is like my favorite thing to talk about. Okay, so that is my explanation for tactile sensitivity. We already talked about auditory sensitivity, and that's pretty much it for sensory sensitivities. They often have really, really simple fixes. I remember a long time ago, we worked with a kid who, oh my gosh, this poor guy, lukewarm bath water, he would just scream. He went to therapy, and they started just doing like really, really light, gentle tactile stimulation. And it was the middle of winter, the middle of December. He took all of his clothes out, ran out into the snow. It was snowing, there's snow on the ground, and he just flung himself down in the snow. He would only wear 1 pair of boots, he would only wear 1 pair of pants, he would only wear a tank top. And then after, I want to say about 3 weeks of working with us, he started being able to take baths and let his mom brush his teeth, and wasn't stripping his clothes off, and actually wore jeans. I think they had to go to a funeral or something, and they had to put him in something other than his rain boots and his tank top, and he wore these clothes with no issue whatsoever. They seem really intense, and they are really intense, but the good news is that there's a pretty simple fix for a lot of these sensory sensitivities. So please reach out. We can book a free consultation anytime if this is something that your child is dealing with. You'll talk to me personally, and I would just love to help you get to the bottom of these things. So don't forget, like I said, we are doing our 2-week challenge. I think I'm going to launch another one on Monday because I'm just so excited about the results that we're getting. Every time I start something new, I'm like, I hope it works. I always know that it works, but I have that little moment of, oh my gosh, I hope these people get results like everybody else is getting results, because it's kind of a new format that we're delivering it in. But I'm so excited about it. I feel really confident about it. I know if you do it, you're going to see huge change with your kids. So if you want to talk about that, please, you can send me a message. We can schedule a consultation. We can schedule a phone call. Just let me know how I can help you. And we just launched our June Jumpstart. So we are doing kind of an extended protocol program with a bunch of cool stuff to get you ready for back to school, kind of give kids a jumpstart on the new semester with things like handwriting, focus, emotional regulation, impulsivity, reading fluency, and all that good stuff. And we have 7 spots left at 45% off. So we're running a really awesome special on this, but they are filling up really fast. We've had a bunch of new people start our program this week, so I'm going to be sharing all of their super exciting and awesome reports with you, I'm sure, very, very soon. But we are already down to 7 spots left at 45% off. The program will still be available after those 7 spots fill up, but it'll be a little bit more expensive after that point. So please let me know if you want to get into either one of those programs. If you have questions, we can call, we can do a meeting over Zoom. But I think the 2-week challenge is a great way to just kind of get your foot in the door and see how your child is reacting to these things. Okay, so I love you guys. Have a great rest of your weekend. I hope you get to spend some wonderful time with family, and we will do this again next week. Bye, you guys.